Hello, welcome to Humboldt Redwood State Park, and we are out here in the actually it's the Mahan Plaque Trail Grove, but I call it the Laura Mahan Grove because she's my hero. And some of you have heard me talk about her before. She is, and I don't have a picture of her. I have her plaque. I'm gonna show you in a minute, but I don't have any tattoos, but if I was going to get one, I would get one of Laura Mahan. So if you are a really good artist and you do tattoos, hit me up after the show here. All right, so I'm going to show you guys Humboldt Redwoods. Look how beautiful. Isn't she lovely? Isn't she beautiful? And she almost wasn't. If you notice right there is a big old stump, okay? And if you looked more around this area, you'd see that there are several stumps. Okay, and this is an otherwise old growth forest. And then right there, you would see, and I'll see if I can get close to this, you'll see a plaque. And that plaque describes why this whole entire forest isn't a bunch of stumps. So again, happy Women's Equality Day, and hopefully you've had a chance to look at the first two. This is part 3, so hopefully you've had a chance to see the first two, one by Shanna and one by Erika. We're celebrating the signing of the 19th Amendment. What's the 19th Amendment?
It's the ratification of women's rights to vote.
It is. It's a ratification of women's right to vote. So, and that covered most women in the United States, but didn't cover all women because Native American women weren't considered citizens at the time, and women of color were largely kept from the ballot boxes. And so we've come far, we still got farther to go, and that means more opportunities. Okay, so the light is doing something weird on my face, so I'm gonna move this around. So Laura Mahan lived many years ago. She's born in the late 1800s, and she was one of the first people to be a Redwood activist. And in my opinion, she should be every bit as popular as John Muir and all those other conservationists who we know their names. But she's not, and she's not because back then we weren't celebrating a whole lot of women. And I'm adjusting the tripod here, so if it looks like I'm trying to give all of you guys a great big kiss, it's just because that needed some help. So Laura Mahan was trying to protect, she was from here. She was born to parents who colonized the area around Lolita. And she saw a lot of the beautiful redwoods of her childhood being cut down. So she started getting concerned and voicing her concern. And she was doing so even before women had the right to vote. And she was an artist, and she was one of the few women who actually went to college at the time. And so she had a little bit of clout. She's from a well-known family. So people were kind of listening to her, and she formed, a group of women, and they tried to save Carson Woods and Fortuna, but unfortunately it failed. And all those trees were cut down. She was trying to get it to be a national park, and she did a lot of advocacy that would be admirable even by today's standards, but unfortunately there was a string of failures. And that speaks to a lot of our experiences. I mean, how many of you have really, really wanted to help protect something or help someone only to fail over and over again? And I think that Laura Mahan, and why she's my hero, and she's my hero. She's like one of my main heroes, not just because she saved so many redwoods, but because she failed so many times and she never gave up. She needed more support, and so she actually got the Women's Federation Club, which Erika talks about in the previous video. She got them in a coup to come up to this little tiny town with a road that wasn't even finished going up here. 101 wasn't even finished yet. And she got all these women, and women of power, women who were married to men of power. She got them to come up here, and they saw this beautiful place. They saw this beautiful place, and they tried to buy it from Pacific Lumber. And Pacific Lumber kind of was like, yeah, we want to sell it. And they got tired of the process. And so they started to cut it down. And when Laura heard about that, I don't know, maybe she thought about her other failures. And maybe she remembered all her childhood redwood groves that she loved being logged. And she took a radical action. The story is that her and maybe some other women came out here, and they put their bodies between the loggers and the trees. So, there's some kids running around. That's what you should be. You should be a kid running around. If you're a kid, you should be running around this forest. So she came out here, and the story goes that she stood in front of the loggers, and she didn't want them to log, and that bought her husband enough time, who was a lawyer, and he went and got a judge to put a stay of logging on this, and so this forest was able to get saved. Not just Mahan Grove, but the Founders Grove, which was one of the most popular redwood groves in the world. So thank you, Laura Mahan. She did a lot of other things that are super, super admirable to save the redwoods. Her family was the second donor to the Humboldt Redwood State Park, the landowner, and she started the Women Save the Redwood League, which wasn't the regular Save the Redwood League. It was its own Humboldt County Women Save the Redwood League. So that's why Laura is my #1 hero, and you could read about her and the other many, many women who save the redwoods, because a lot of us, we know about the Save the Redwood League. What we don't know is the Save the Redwood League was one of the first integrated conservation groups that had women on its board, like as soon as they met the Women's Federation. The Women's Federation and the garden clubs, which were women's clubs, also saved the redwoods, and led by Laura Mahan. The reason why they were so effective is because women didn't have the right to affect economy, not even rich white women. And so they were basically told, you can have garden clubs and you can have plant clubs. Well, conservation wasn't a big leap from that, and so it was a natural fit for them to start speaking out on conservation efforts, and they did. Lots of them. There's, they also like spoke against the feathered hat things during the early 1900s, late 1800s. So women did a lot for the redwoods. They did a lot for conservation, and we should definitely like raise up this history and talk about it. And when we talk about it, we got to talk about these people weren't perfect. Like the women like Laura Mahan, they weren't perfect. There was a lot of other things they could have been working on during that time. They chose to work on saving the redwoods, and I'm very, very grateful for it. So now that we have equality, now that we can vote, and now that we have these redwoods, we owe it to heroes like Laura Mahan to keep working to make the world a better place for the next generation. Laura Mahan and the women who saved the redwoods and got the right to vote made this a better world for us by saving the last bit of old growth forest, and we can honor that legacy by doing the same thing and not letting species go extinct, and making sure that everybody gets the chance and the right to vote, and that voices get heard. So thank you very much for joining us for this part 3 series. Please come to Humboldt Redwood State Park, and come check out the Mahan Plaque Grove Trail, and come see this plaque, these stumps that were cut before Laura got here. Can you see them? They're huge. I think we're too close. But here's her plaque again. You can see the stumps. You can see the exact site where Laura, out here in a long flowing black dress and big black hat, put her life on the line to save trees. Happy Women's Equality Day. Like and share. We're here every day at 3 o'clock doing live programs.